Have you ever heard that trading is risky? I'm going to show you how you've been applying that and the 2% rule or the 5% rule all wrong your whole trading career. The first thing you need to understand is this: what is actually risk? What does risk actually mean? The word and the definition for risk is putting something in jeopardy for a potential for a greater gain. Okay? So where there's risk, there's also always reward. Risk cannot exist without reward, and reward cannot exist without risk. Let's say that again. Risk cannot exist without reward, and reward cannot exist without risk. But there's something that's pivotal for you to understand. Okay? Risk actually means running into situations knowledgeless. Okay? The less knowledge you have about something, the more inherently risky it is. Me driving a car is less risky than my 5-year-old brother driving a car. Why is that? It's the same car, it's the same vehicle, but because we have two different knowledge levels and experience levels, the risk is different. But here's the beauty about trading, okay? The risk of trading can be minimized, but the reward always grows exponentially. What do I mean by that? Okay? You need to understand that for every risk you're taking, you're also leaving yourself open to reward. So what you have to do is decide how to actually balance the risk to reward ratio. And I'm going to show you that. The mistake that you've made in the past when it comes to trading is that you don't understand what risk capital actually means. See, there's 3 different types of capital as a trader that every single trader has. Number 1, you have account capital. Okay, that's the total number of money in your account. That's the total balance of your account. Let's say you have $100 in that account. Okay, that's your account capital. Number 2, you have operational capital. Operational capital is how much money you put into a trade. Okay, and number 3, you have risk capital. Risk capital is how much money you're willing to risk or lose in a trade. The mistake with many traders and aspiring traders is they often confuse operational capital with risk capital. They're 2 different things, okay? So when a guru tells you, oh, the 5% rule, okay? Never risk more than 5% of your account. That is a false statement. What they're actually telling you is that your risk capital shouldn't be more than 5% of your account. So if you have $100, you shouldn't risk more than what? 5% of $100 is what? $5, okay? So if the $5% is the risk capital, then what is your operational capital? Great question. Your operational capital can actually be your whole account. I know, it's crazy, right? You can actually put your whole account into a trade and still what? Still have a 5% risk capital, because there's 2 different things. So for example, if I put $100 into a trade and I tell, hey, if this gets to $95, kick me out of the trade, that is still a 5% risk capital. It's the same thing as if I put $5 into a trade and I say, hey, I'm willing to lose that whole $5. Same situation, okay? Different operational capital, same risk capital. I can either put the whole $5 into a trade and that'll be my 5%, or I can put my whole $100 into a trade and say, hey, stop me out at $95, only letting me risk $5, okay? So you can put different operational capital amounts and still come up with the same risk capital. Why is this important? And this is the key. I want you guys to pay attention to this. This is the key right here. When you get into a trade, your operational capital is being multiplied, not your risk capital. What do I mean by that? Great question. If I put $100 into a trade and it grows 50%, let's say I make a 50% return on my trade, great trade. My operational capital was $100. Guess what I just made? I just made $50 on that trade. Now my account balance, my account capital is $150. But if my operational capital was $5 and I made 50% on that trade, guess what? Now I only made $2.50. Now my account balance is $102.50. Two different results. One guy has $150. The other guy has $102.50. Why? Because they use different operational capital. The goal of trading is to use as much operational capital as possible with as little risk capital. So you can slice this up many ways. If your risk capital is only 5% and you have $100, you can put $100 into a trade and say have a 5% stop loss or $5 stop. You can put $20 into a trade and have a 50% stop. Okay? Because 50% of $20, I think it's 75% of $20 is what? $5. Still the same $5. You can put $50 into a trade and have a 10% stop, all still risking the same $5. So your risk capital is staying the same, but your operational capital changes. Remember, the goal is to have as much operational capital as possible with the same risk capital. So how does that help? If you have a $10,000 account and you only want to risk $100, let's say, I can put $10,000 into a trade, have a 1% risk capital and 1% stop, which is the $100. You can do the math for me, you too, okay? But my operational capital, if my operational capital goes up 20%, now I just made $2K on that trade while only risking the $100. Why? Because I'm increasing my operational capital without increasing my risk capital. So with the risk comes huge reward if you know how to play the risk to reward game right. So you need to write this down and figure this out on every trade you're getting into. What is my operational capital? And what is my risk capital? And that's how you can make the risk worth the reward. Or you can reward your risk in this case. I'll see you on the next video.